guys. We're getting an opportunity to talk as a husband and wife for you guys on all sorts of different topics and things, family, marriage, business, the world, the things going on. And this is kind of what we're going to be doing here. And so Nate and I are sitting down here. We're actually like pondering what the heck are we wanting to talk about right now, starting off with all these things. Because there's probably 1,000 topics we could totally go on. And we're trying to come up with the right thing. But I think, first of all, just introducing ourselves as to who we are. And so this is my amazing husband, Nate. And I'm his wife, Heidi. And we've been married quite a while. I think I was doing the math. Am I correct? We're 27 years now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 27 years.
Mm-hmm. Married.
27 years married, have kids that are not kids anymore.
Yeah, they're adults. So we're in that interesting phase of life where we're getting to enjoy each other's company differently than when we had young ones in the house. And we're getting to experience doing business together more and also doing business with our kids. And so we have like this unusual amount of wisdom that we keep finding ourselves stumbling into just because of the life that we've been blessed with and the family we've been given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because a lot of people when we were younger and just starting to have kids or even just first married, they would give us all this advice like, oh, you know what you should do, and oh, you know, make sure you pay attention to the kids because next thing you know, you turn around and they're going to be old and moving out of the house and married and having kids of their own. And when you're in the moment of that, you're like, yeah, for sure. But then that actually happens, and so we turn around and like I have these funny things when I'm out at work because I feel like in the industry that we all work in, entertainment, I'm seeing that there's mostly younger people now, which makes me kind of the older guy, which I don't feel like I'm the older guy. But
you're OG, man. That's what they call you, the old
OG,
gangster.
Yeah,
OG.
Right. But the funny part is that now you have all these, both of us have all these wisdoms of what we should do different, and I feel like a lot of the things we did it right because we made decisions that were kind of against the normal things that you do as parents or even as people in the United States raising kids. We chose differently, a whole bunch of different things along the way.
And that doesn't mean that we knew we were doing it right in the process. We just knew we were placing one foot in front of the other where we felt like was the right place to place them.
Yeah, it was like the next right thing, the next best thing, the next as much as we could be informed thing.
Right.
And going along with it, I mean, I've never been one to just let the culture tell me what to do. I've always looked like, okay, so that's what everybody else is doing. Why are they doing that? And what are the benefits of it? And how does that actually, make sense for me and my family? Maybe I'll try something a little different. And what I liked is when we had the kids in preschool and the teachers came to us that first year in preschool and they're like, hey, you should probably hold the kid back and just let them run another year in the preschool. Oh, okay, well then they're going to be behind their friends. And they're like, they're not going to care. They're more interested in messing around, and instead of going into school and kind of trying to flounder about and fail about it, they can get ready for learning and go into school and be learning. And
I would say that's probably one of the first hard decisions we made for their education as far as, like, what we thought was I call it the conveyor belt of things that we were supposed to be doing, the process that we're supposed to be doing, and then someone putting a glitch in the system that I felt was like, oh wait, that's interrupting the process I thought we were supposed to be in. But it was actually wisdom speaking to us on what to do better for our kids that was outside the box thinking that benefited our family ultimately long term.
Oh yeah, I mean and the result really was that the kids, when they finally went into first grade, second grade, and on through, they had amazing grades. They were in their top of their class every year. And then we get about halfway through, and even paying to put them in a private school and do all that started to not make sense.
Right.
And we made it and kind of interrupted their life decision, which when we look back at our own lives and the things that we had to deal with at those times going into middle school, what were some of the challenges and things that were going to go on? And for me, I didn't want to have them figure it out on their own. And that's maybe the best thing is like I've never let them figure stuff out on their own. I've always interrupted and go, oh yeah, well this is this and that's that. okay, Daddy, I'm really too young for all of this stuff, but okay, you know, and that was like most of the conversations. But then
Well, I would say
they had
though,
the education by the time that stuff came up. So when their friends would bring stuff up,
right.
they were already ahead of the curve because they had already heard it from us.
Yeah, and I think we'll go into depth in that on probably the next one that we shoot here.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think the big thing for us has just been being transparent with each other, having a focus of marriage first, you know, God first, marriage, and then our kids.
Yeah, right.
Because for you and me, being pastors' kids, being raised in a ministry situation, you know, experiencing how people would idolize or choose to put their energy more towards people that God hadn't given them, specifically being their children first,
Right.
And prioritizing it on others, how that sacrifice affected you and I and how we were raised,
Right.
and how we chose to do differently.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And being Gen X generation, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have all the cliches. Oh yeah, we were raised on hose water, and you know, we came home when the street lights turned on, and we got to ride bikes
That's
and do
you.
all kinds of stuff.
I had a different upbringing. Keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, but I
Yes.
mean, but see, that's relevant because some of those kids
Yeah,
were living and growing up in super conservative Christian families,
that'd be me.
and they didn't get to watch MTV, and they didn't get to listen to music on the radio.
Sitting right here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you had to be like this perfect, maybe even like halfway Amish kind of level. Like you were completely isolated away from the world, and
Right.
you didn't get to experience it. And then when all of a sudden you did get to experience it, you dove right in full force,
That would
which
be me.
was then you had nothing to balance it from.
Right.
So like raising kids and all that, those were the things that we made the decisions from because we
Right.
were looking at how we grew up and focusing on how we grew up and why we grew up. All kinds of really good things that are nostalgic for sure. But then other things like, oh yeah, well we could probably do this better.
Right.
And so we thought about it. And I would say getting to this point, having made all the decisions, you know, preschool thing, the middle school thing, homeschool thing, I would probably now, based on where we are in history, what has gone on with the United States as far as just all the noise of politics and wokeisms and all the other things that
Right.
are out there, and just all of the politics everywhere. And it's
Right.
left, right, center, up, down, flipped, all kinds of colors, upside, you know, everything. And I would probably never put kids in school.
Right.
And I keep telling my brothers this, and I tell other people, it's like, I wouldn't put kids in school. I'd completely
Yeah.
unschool the whole thing. And obviously, if you're going to build a family, you need to have the basics, right?
Right.
Reading, writing, arithmetic. Okay, that's great. You need to have the basics of science and all those kinds of things. But with, you know, YouTubes and other kinds of ways to learn how to do things,
Right.
I could teach my kids 10,000 times more than a teacher in a school in a situation that is normal schooling situations and not be bombarded with all the
Yeah.
other bull crap of the universe.
Now, mind you, this is just skimming across the surface of all the information that we have. This is
Right.
us just giving you like the synopsis of who we are and what we are about. Because we could go really deep into those. You think that's deep? That's not deep at all. That's just the surface. But that's how Nate has always been very intense and passionate about information and things that would be beneficial for our family to be aware of and to help guide us. And I would say when we first got married, we had a lot of things between the two of us that we had to work out as far as trust issues and you know, just the communication that we needed to work out because we came from two different worlds, two different ways of being raised, two different examples of marriage, you know, all of that, and we had to work through that. And you know, I would say in a nutshell, the reason that we are able to sit here and have this conversation and look each other in the eye and feel confident that one or the other is not going to say something weird or that we've done well is because we went through the process of putting God first, putting each other together second, and working through all the things together to heal and to move forward and communicate better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my dad said to us when we were first dating, it's like, if you guys are going to get married, then the divorce word is not an option.
Well, he technically said,
Yeah.
right before we got married, he said, do you remember what?
Yeah, for the, like, you should say it because of the way
Okay, it
you
was
said
really funny, and I took him serious, though.
Yeah.
He said, if you guys decide to get divorced, let me know. I'll take you out in the field and shoot you both. It'll be way
Right.
easier.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
he was right.
Well, and that's it. So
Yeah.
we've made that really the biggest deal.
Mm.
And we've had those moments where like, maybe this is over. Huh. And I think from an easy standpoint, you could hit those moments in your marriage and just be like, yeah, that's what everybody's doing. I don't know that I'm in love anymore, and I
Yeah.
can't figure that out. But see, those are phases of going through life.
Yeah.
Those are the phases of like, well, this is asking me to do things that I wasn't necessarily thinking.
Yeah.
So the vows all of a sudden mean way more.
It's
and
like,
you're like, am I going to actually commit to this?
right?
Or am I going to kind of pansy out and run away or take an easy out? But then, if you really think about it for real, what does that do for everything? And you could think about stupid stuff like, oh, now my checking account will be messed up. Oh, okay. But like, I'll have to get new credit cards. Or what is this going to actually do to the relationships of all of the other peripheral relationships around?
Yeah.
And when I grew up in a church, I watched that. I watched people in the church do those things. And watched, even when I was just a kid, watching people that came over to my parents' house and they were super cool friends and we got to really know them, and then all of a sudden they're divorced and you feel like, oh, I don't know what I think about that person anymore, and it feels really weird. Well, do I want to do that to my kids and my family? And do I want to see my kids and my family end up in kind of the disasters that come from divorce?
Right.
That are done wrong? And
Right.
some divorces can be easier than others, but as soon as you start building in all of the other peripheral relationships of each other's family, and then add kids to it, and then add
Right.
kids' friends and family to it, and then all this other kind of stuff, it starts to become more impactful than just, oh, I don't feel like I love you anymore. And that's just like,
Yeah.
it's a phase. He goes
Which
through the
we've
phase.
had that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
We've had
Absolutely.
that conversation, and we've had to work through a lot of stuff. I think the base of what you and I have individually had, which has been a saving grace as we've learned to grow together, was the fact that when we actually signed the marriage certificate, that license, it was like signing a contract. And irregardless, when you sign a contract, no matter what your feelings are, what's in the contract is solid. And so, you can say you don't care for the person, you don't care for what they do, you don't like the fact that they wear their shirt inside out or brush their teeth at a certain time or squeeze the toothpaste or whatever. All the little things and the big things that come up, but those are feelings. But the contract still stands.
Right.
And at some point, you have to go all the way back down to the contract and go, okay, what's there?
Right.
And how do you start dating each other and loving each other again in a way that's genuine for who you are? Because, newsflash, you get married. We got married at 21 and 22. And you're not the same person at 49 and 48 that you were at 21 and 22. So you have to continue to fall in love with each other at new stages. And that's a big thing
Right.
that we've had to learn, is that, I'm not necessarily the hoochie coochie cutie that you liked and wanted to pay attention to when we first got together, but you have, thank God, fallen in love with who I am now, because, in a lot of ways, it's my fault that he doesn't have hair. I stressed him out, right? We've made babies together. My body's changed, right? And that is stuff that we've done together. And if you don't own that and you try to blame shift it off and you don't take pride in those steps and the things that you're doing, there's no value in it to you, then of course you're going to end up trying to find a way to break the contract.
Right.
And I'm not there. I don't want to do that ever.
No. And I think that's the coolest part about getting to this part of life. We're not through all the things.
Right.
We're not the ones that can sit there and in our 90s yet and say, what would be cool is to do it like this. And we had good examples there. Your grandparents were pretty good examples about how to do it all the way into their 90s.
That's right.
And we got to, because of the decisions we made for our careers and other business things and strategies, we didn't go tour the world and make all tons of money and do all this big shot stuff, because we wanted our kids to know your grandparents and to know the periphery family around it. Your parents, my parents, brothers.
Your grandparents.
Yep. All of those things. And that was a decision for a certain period of time. And that just ended a few years back when your grandparents passed away. And one of my grandparents are all finally passed away. And then recently my dad passes away. So now there's like all these places where maybe the required things that we made the decision to stick around with the periphery family is not necessarily quite as important, and now we can start to branch out, and we're looking at the world a bit differently now that we're older too, and we're still going through stuff. Like, we're sitting here talking on a video, going through stuff that's real stuff.
Yep.
And the plan is to, branch our family out across the country. Kids and us moving to the Florida area, but that's the thing too. Like, I think people go, "Oh, you're moving." Well, no, we're adding a destination that we live in.
So we
live in Florida and we live in Colorado, and that is the plan, is to keep it that way.
Yep.
And we spend a large portion of time in both locations. Business has got an office here and there, and we might open other offices in other locations as well. But like, that's the coolest part about the information or technology or attention age that we live in.
Right.
Is that it really doesn't matter where you are physically, because somebody calls you on the phone and you pick them up. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting here in Colorado, or if I'm in Florida, or if I'm on a beach somewhere in Haiti or wherever. I don't beach in Haiti, that's a thing. But like a beach in like, Hawaii or something like that. Wherever we are doing whatever we're doing, it doesn't really matter. You pick up the phone and you talk to people as if they're just down the street. You plan meetings the same way. So that's how our world is. I don't want to live like what had been in the past, and I think is kind of a generational hangover, is that people couldn't travel as much in the past, and so they didn't. And so I remember growing up, there was people that were like, "Oh, I've never been to Denver," or "I've never been out of the state," or "I've never been on an airplane." And I'm sure there's a lot of that still exists.
Well, I had a great aunt that hadn't left the state of Colorado. She hadn't left northern Colorado at all her entire life. And I think she was like 60-something, maybe 70. And my grandma and grandpa, it was my grandma's sister, they were like, "Let's go to Branson, Missouri."
Yeah.
And she wouldn't get on an airplane. So they drove across country and afforded her the opportunity then to see more of the country before she had Alzheimer's take her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and that kind of stuff is what, back then, that was a big thing.
Right.
Because vehicles, transportation stuff wasn't a deal. Today, we can pretty much live anywhere and make an appointment next week and drop in and have it, make it happen. So, and people would never know that, well, I was just in Florida 24 hours ago,
Right.
So.
Well, we're in an interesting phase, too, because, we may be, a lot of people in modern age would call it empty nester syndrome. We're not, because we're still a tightly knit family, and our adult daughters are doing their thing. They're, women, and making their ministry and doing their professions, and they're working with us and owning things with us and growing things. But we're in a position now where we're getting to learn to support them as adults and have conversations as adults. But then we're also in this interesting phase where our parents are now getting older. Your mom's going to be 80 next month. My parents are a few years behind her in that, and they're starting to have the physical challenges and stuff like that.
Right.
And so now we're in an interesting situation where we're trying to strategize as both oldest from both sides of the family. And it might be an old-fashioned way of looking at it, but really it is an unspoken thing, is, what do you do to support that properly and lead your siblings and their families in a way to support your family too.
Right.
So I think this journey that we're taking here on this social situation, the YouTube and all of this, is going to be pretty fun. We're going to be transparent about a lot of things that weren't necessarily easy and things that are great and amazing. But I think in a nutshell, would you agree that we're God-fearing and loving followers of Christ who are fiercefully, or forcefully, I don't know, fearfully and wonderfully made, but fiercely, passionate about, our culture not being taken out and leaving a legacy where generations to come can live in the freedom that we've enjoyed,
right,
and leaving things better than what we found it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, so you'll probably, no doubt, will hear political types of conversations that can sound that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'll guarantee you that right out of the gate, I'm not going to specifically bias towards one side or the other, because I believe both of them have got problems. So I bias towards liberty, justice, freedom, a constitutional republic, and that's the way that this country was founded, and that's the way this country needs to stay. And I know there's a lot of people out there that would call that political one way or the other. It's not. It's really about freedom. There's even aspects of it that some people would even call, super left or right sides of it. But really, if you ultimately look at every bit of it, I'm for everyone's freedom and their liberty. And I think that our constitutional republic sets up a really great way for that to manage itself.
Well, it sets it up.
And allow people to manage itself.
Right, and it sets it up so that the religious freedom that we fight for everybody, regardless of what you believe, it sets you up to be able to believe in your morals and your standards and to have the freedom to practice your moral and standards. And I don't want someone telling me I can't pray in public. Right. Or that I, can't worship on Sundays or take a Sabbath or all that kind of stuff. That's my decision, my freedom for my religion. Right. And I would support the freedom for others to have theirs. Now, granted, I'd love everybody to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior personally and to have a personal relationship with Christ. And I will encourage that and speak about that. But I'm still going to fight for the freedom for everyone to be able to have the ability to have the free will.
Yep.
To speak and do and choose on their own.
Yep, absolutely. And so that's part of what our businesses are about, is really doing the business the way that Jesus would have us do it within the constitutional republic that we live in, with the freedoms that we have.
Right.
And so free to use our business or not use our business.
Right.
Same way I'm free to use your business or not use your business. I don't need a third party interrupting that, and I don't need other people's agendas to infiltrate into the middle of those things. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is we're kind of settling out of some of the bigger front, like activity operations types of business, and moving into asset management, operate, and ownership, and developing IPs that we own and making those things bigger things. One of those is our stories that we're writing.
Yep.
And those stories are, like right now, there's one that's going to be coming out in a comic book we're going to talk about in Period. And that's a huge one. That's based on a project called Earth Illuminated that we did for about 2.5, 3 years, almost 4 years actually. And that project, how it really evolved through that, and we started to realize there's a big demand for a really cool sci-fi story. And so with some of the other people we've teamed up with, they've compared it to Star Wars 1977 and Interstellar.
Yep.
And so that storyline is pretty cool. And so the comic book is going to be the first version of that.
Right.
And we really want to get into the stories as to why that story, specifically why it was written the way that we did, and how our partners at Big Man Comics, Gabe El Taib, how he's really been able to expand that story and make it more impactful. I write the stories tend to be, from a lot of the viewpoints of the world. And I don't have like the summer blockbuster kind of ads that we can put into that. And he really brought that summer blockbuster feel to it and really expanded some of the characters, kind of developed out some of that stuff. But those story concepts are still fully what we wrote together as a family. And we're going to continue to expand those things and talk more about that specifically. But then there's other stories that we're writing that are going to just be about really cool immersive environments that you can come and be a part of. Part of our work going down to Florida is really going to be getting involved in as much of the immersive attractions as we possibly can and be involved in that. Some we'll be able to say stuff about, some we won't. But we'll be ideally writing some of these stories and bringing some of these concepts to life through every kind of idea, whether it's just a walk-in immersive visual projection stuff around you, or clear into like building giant tornadoes or doing laser tag experiences. And the whole thing is based around new concepts of new ideas of new stories that can be as impactful or maybe even more impactful than some of the stories that are out there now.
Right.
We love all of the stuff that's going on, but sometimes big giant corporations buy up a cool idea and an IP, and then they kind of do their thing, and then it just kind of fragments away because the original intent behind it all of a sudden is a great platform to preach a message on. And I don't believe that that's what IPs are about in and of themselves, is preaching messages. They can start off and have a great place, and they will speak a message, but it doesn't need to be mutated. It needs to do its thing. If you've got a new message, write a new story.
Right.
And that's great. That's what I'm all about. That's the freedom and liberty. But to come back in and say, oh, no, everything that we did with that IP, we're going to throw it out now, and we're going to change it over to this. Yeah. And that's a big old rant we'll talk about, too, and I'm sure everybody's going to hear about that one.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's a lot that's going to come through on all of our different conversations. You can see how passionate and easy it is to just switch into a conversation and probably go down a slope and just be like there for a while, and that's fine. But just you're welcome to follow us. We'd love to have you subscribe and be a part of it. We're also going to be talking about what our family's doing, encouraging you to also follow and subscribe, different channels that we have going on. But this particular video is just to say hello, and that we're excited for you to follow us on this journey. And we're not really sure what it's going to look like long term as far as all the different things we're going to talk about, but we're just going to follow God's lead, and we're going to be honest with you about where we're feeling as a family, as a husband and wife team, doing life, and share that with you. Hopefully be inspirational and to guide and encourage you. So, yeah. So thanks for coming along with us on this journey, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Yep, see you there.